Welcome to the first episode of Feature Presentation. As I already announced in a previous video, this segment is going to be all about older films that I've never reviewed and just feel like having an excuse to. It doesn't have to tie into anything. It might at some point, but it doesn't have to. If I feel like talking about Dumb and Dumber, I can. And as I sat down making a list of movies that I've never talked about on my channel, I was shocked to realize I've never reviewed Iron Man, the 2008 film starring Robert Downey Jr., directed by Jon Favreau, that launched the MCU as we know it today. And this is pre-MCU. Like, this movie opens with the Paramount logo. So after being kidnapped by a powerful terrorist organization, brilliant industrialist Tony Stark narrowly escapes using an iron suit he crafted from scrap metal and spare parts. Upon returning home, he devotes all of his time and resources to perfecting the Iron Man suit and using it to fight evil, sometimes in the place where he least expects it. Of course, Iron Man wasn't as well known as heroes like Spider-Man, Batman, or Superman when this movie came out. In fact, there were even other heroes far better known than him that some people might consider obscure. 2008's Iron Man changed all of that, and that is because, largely, of Robert Downey Jr. You could talk a lot about how well structured this film is, and it definitely is. But by all accounts and purposes, Robert Downey Jr. is the reason so many people know and love Iron Man / Tony Stark. Jon Favreau is an extremely great storyteller, and when it comes to Iron Man, the behind the scenes seem to suggest that there was quite a bit of discussion that really wasn't necessarily scripted. A lot of improv, a lot of on-the-day ideas, things that the MCU would never do now. Everything is so structured and episodic, and to be honest, a little rigid. When I watched Iron Man for the first time in many years, I cannot believe how refreshing it was. Everything about this movie does not feel like what the MCU became. And that's not to say that the MCU still can't recover from its lull that it's in. But when I watched this movie, I really did feel like I was watching a film. It didn't feel like it was some kind of digital animated product. And you can feel that live wire energy coming from Downey in every single scene that he's in. You can tell that he knows how important this project is to his career. Because of course he had had great films like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Zodiac come out before this after his recovery period that he went through. But this movie was the movie that put him on the map, and you can see that in every single frame that he's in. He knows that, and he is giving everything to this movie. And you can really feel that he's ad-libbing and coming up with things on the spot that are not scripted. There are moments where you can see the actors in the scene with him trying not to laugh. Moments where you can see the actors next to him not entirely sure what to say, and it plays well for the character because Tony Stark comes off the way he does, but it also feels kind of like they're overwhelmed by just how talented he is. The other remarkable thing about the movie I noticed rewatching it was just how much story they pack into the first 25 minutes. You know about his father, you know about what he does for a living, how he's a womanizer, you know about his thoughts on weapons, you know how naive and oblivious he is to what his weapons are being used for. And you also meet the true hero of the movie, Yinsen, a man who's held captive with Tony Stark, who helps him build the iron suit to escape, and even sacrifices himself in the process. But it's not just Tony Stark seeing his weapons being used for what he never thought they were being used for. It's the example of this man that makes Tony Stark realize he has to change his life. Favreau shows a really great instinct for showing events in different ways that you normally wouldn't expect them to be shown. For instance, the first time that we see Stark put in the arc reactor that he makes into his chest is not in some grand, beautiful, wide shot on film or in 8K or whatever. It's from the perspective of a low-quality security camera on a small TV. The other thing the movie is extremely good at is something that later MCU films have suffered from, and that is a perfect balance of humor and real drama. This movie does not feel like a joke. It 100% is taking the character seriously and taking its story seriously. Tony Stark can make a great joke and a quip or a one-liner, but when things have to be serious, he recognizes that. When he is staring death in the face, he's not like, well, this is kind of funny. And that's something that so many modern movies are missing now. In fact, the MCU is a big proponent of this. Sincerity, earnestness, truly being invested in the seriousness of its story and not having to constantly wink at the audience every 2 seconds and acknowledge how silly something is. Part of this is our own fault too. I mean, how many times have we heard people say that they unironically love something? Like they just can't say they love it, or that it's a guilty pleasure. I've certainly done that before. Just embrace what you like. But it also goes into how we talk about movies because we tend to mock things so much now. The internet has kind of made us arrogant, and it's allowed a lot of that to seep into us, that we think we know everything when we really don't. And sometimes filmmakers, directors, and writers, and studio heads even, are like, well, we can't take things seriously anymore. We have to make everything a big fat joke. Thor Ragnarok pushed it a bit, even though I like that movie quite a bit. In fact, I even kind of love Thor Ragnarok. But then you look at Love and Thunder, and you realize, okay, so we're just going to go straight in to silly. You look back on the earlier MCU movies like this very first one, and you see the perfect balance of humor, action, and drama. The characters are so well realized and so well performed, and the casting is truly perfect. But at the end of the day, it's the fact that the movie understands its tone perfectly, and it knows when to be serious and when to tell a joke. And even when it does tell a joke, it doesn't feel like, oh, well, we have to write a joke for this scene. This scene is about humor, right? It just feels like character building. All the jokes that Tony says throughout the film build his character up, especially early on when he's just kind of a dick the whole time. The modern MCU, as well as most modern blockbusters, could really learn from this. Also, in a hilarious side point, I noticed that the same actor from The Dark Knight is also in this movie. His name is Joshua Harto. He had quite the 2008. Speaking of actors who are in this movie, Terrence Howard. And he's really good in the movie, but there's a scene now that's kind of weird.
Damn. Next time, baby.
Well, I've also always wondered if this shot is a tribute to the Die Hard 2 shot, where the plane blows up and McClane shoots into a close-up. The one thing about the movie that's always bugged me, and I guess this is spoilers if you've never seen Iron Man, is what exactly Obadiah plans to do after all of this stuff. Like, he is in a suit fighting Iron Man. Enough people seem to know that he's doing this, and the suggestion is that he would like to continue working at Stark Industries afterwards, and I just don't really know how he plans to do that. I'm sure there is some theory floating around out there about what exactly his plan is after this event, but when Coulson and all of his agents, as well as Pepper Potts, know, she even has information from his computer that would incriminate him, and I just don't know exactly what he's planning to do after this. Other than that, Iron Man is a great superhero film. It has an amazing lead performance, great writing, great visual effects, great score, really good action sequences, and it's paced pretty much perfectly. When you look at this movie, you can totally understand why it launched the MCU. And it's pretty crazy that it holds up as well as it does and is still better than a lot of the MCU movies that came out afterwards. And lastly, I just want to talk about the after credits scene, because back in the day, after credits scenes were not a thing. The MCU kind of popularized that. Occasionally, your random movie would have like an after credits scene, but nobody really stayed for the credits. I don't know why my friends and I did. It was one of two reasons. Either we loved the movie so much that we were just sitting there talking about it, or my friend told us he had heard there was something after the credits, and so we stayed. I can't remember which one it was, but we stayed. And when Samuel L. Jackson appeared as Nick Fury and said,
I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. Yeah, I didn't know what the Avengers were. Like, by no means was I like this massive comic book nerd. I liked superhero movies and superhero TV shows. I read some comic books, but clearly was not very well versed in them. But my friend who was with me was. I'm talking like he has stacks as high as this room's ceiling of comic books. And he was losing his goddamn mind. I mean, just flipping out. And I was like, what, man? Are you okay? Iron Man's a great superhero film. Most of you already knew that, but now I finally got to talk about it thanks to this segment. I cannot wait to continue doing videos here. I really can't. I have so many things. I'd love to talk about the Jack Ryan movies. I'd love to review Twister or Air Force One, Cellular. Have you ever fucking seen Cellular? I would love to review that movie. I hope you guys enjoy this segment moving forward. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. Look forward to more videos very soon, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmannized.